Okay. So now I will upload the QR code. Okay. So there is a QR code. Can you see or not, everyone? The screen share, can you see? Okay. Okay, you have to register one more time for those one I already go out and then I'm coming in again already. Okay. Yep, the attendance one, you can do it later if you don't during the break. Okay. So I continue with the lectures. Sorry. So we've gone through the purpose of having standard form, and now we look into the problems of standard form, the pros and cons. So these are the potential problems in using standard form. Okay. This is the key problems in standard form usage. The parties that is using standard form, they do not have a proper knowledge and understand of the provision. A lot of them will read the standard form in isolation. Because to understand standard form, you cannot read in isolation. You cannot memorize standard form. Standard form understanding needs a coordinated understanding. Which clause is related with which other clause or subclauses. You need to get the better picture. Then only you will be able to understand the standard form application is of the parties involved. So this problem is lack of knowledge. Okay. The second one, more often than not, the understanding or the interpretation among the parties is usually in hostile environment. Finally, they have to let the court to go and interpret it. So these are the second point that you need to look into it. And then the third point is the risk aspect of the document. A lot of them don't understand which part belongs to the employer, which part belong to the consultants, which part belong to the contractors, and especially the employer. They thought they are the paymaster. They can instruct and go to the project site and all sorts of so-called action directly to the contractor, subcontractors, which is not correct. Okay, so a lot of them doesn't know how the contracts operate. So, and also how the risks are allocated. Okay, yeah. The worst one is this: consultants and employer go and amend the standard form. Okay, so once they amend the standard form, the interpretation for the standard or the things that are amended is definitely not so straightforward. You need the expert to come in, okay, to help out. If not, you may be big trouble. Okay, so these are the problems that you can see on making use of the standard form. Although the standard form got its advantages and so on, but these are the problem. And then what are the potential solution to the standard form from the above problem? Okay, so these are the potential solution to the problem. Okay, ultimately is the knowledge of the parties that is handling the project. Okay, yeah. So this is the very important point. The solution is the parties must know how the standard form is to be operated, and then you maybe have to make use of the expert to help out. Okay, so these are the we will go a lot more when you look into our tutorial session. Okay, yeah. And then the next area we are going to look into will be the roles. You look into the client, the employer. Okay, so under the employer, you look into the roles of the employer. So please differentiate between the roles, then obligation. See here. Okay, so roles, obligation, or sometimes responsibility. Okay, so these are the things that you must differentiate between them. What is the role? So hope you don't get confused when you see the word roles of the employer. More often than not, employer is to pay, okay, act as a financial. So this is the key role employer should play in the usual construction contract. Okay, so then what are the obligations? Yeah, okay, it's not limited to paying for the work. That is number one. And then the other obligation is to make sure that if the contractor is entitled for time, additional time or extension of time, then it needs to be granted. If the contractor is entitled for extra money, then it has to be paid. Okay, so this is important. So these are the important obligation of the employer. Apart from paying for the work, you may look into the additional time required for the project or additional money for the project. Why? Because it is the failure of the employer's fault. This must be the employer's fault or the architect's fault or the employer's representative, that is architect. Okay, so these are the important things that the employer obligation. Apart from these two main ones, then these are the other things that the employer must carry out. If the employer didn't do this, the project cannot move. Okay, so other obligation of the employer apart from this, so-called number one, and this one, number two, and this one is number three. So this one will be number 4 onward already. Okay, so this one will be your
Sir, your slide stuck already.
pardon?
Your slide stuck already. Yeah.
I haven't. I mean, you can see already. Can you see?
Your slide is not moving.
No, I haven't adjust.
Oh, you haven't adjust. You try adjust.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
I want to get the number. I want to give the numbering to you.
Oh,
see.
Because here is still showing what the possible root cause of the problem like that.
Oh, okay. Let me check and see. Let
Wait,
me adjust.
I screenshot for you.
Huh?
I screenshot for you.
Never mind. So these are the first three, and then the other one is another 6. Altogether, there are 9 obligation by the employer. So you mean you can't see the change?
Yeah. Now you see the Wong
now?
Seng Lee, they start there.
Which one? This one. Problems.
The Wong Seng Lee one. Yeah. You see.
Now can see or not the change?
Cannot.
Cannot. What happened? Very strange. I don't have this problem, you know. This is the first time. So now what? Worst came to worst, have to go out and come in again. The so-called screen share. Is it okay? No, I try again. I try to go out from the screen share again. Okay. Stop sharing. Can see now? Can you see now? Can or not?
Yes.
Can, okay, good, good, good. Okay. So can you see now again? Because I go back, sometimes come back, the screen share is missing again. Okay. So apart from the three obligations, the major one, paying for the work and then paying for granting extension of time to the contractor and granting extra money to the contractor if the client or the employer or the architect is in the wrong. Okay. Apart from that, must give possession of site. This one we will cover in other section. To give possession of site is a very important topic. Okay. To appoint architect. Without the architect, the project cannot even move. Okay. Supply instruction. Supply instruction. Why? Because the client will supply instruction to the architect, and the architect will pass it down to the contractor. The client cannot supply instruction directly to the contractor. Supply cannot work through the so cannot do it directly. Supply instruction must be through the architect. Okay. To nominate specialist subcontractors and suppliers. So these are the duties of the employer. Okay, not to interfere with the progress of the work. Yeah, this is what I say. A lot of them, the owner thought that I'm the paymaster, I'm the king. Can go and interfere with the progress of work. They are totally wrong. Okay, yeah, and very important, not to disturb the contractor, because once you award the contract to the contractor, how the contractor do the works is the contractor's so-called control. You don't go and disturb the contractor on how to carry out the work. The contractor to finish the work for you. If they cannot finish, then you impose your punishment in the sense of liquidated damages. Now we will cover that topic in future. Okay, so these are the part of the obligation. Then the very important one, contract administrator. The roles, the responsibility, the duties, and so and the power. This is the thing that you need to understand better, because it's a very important one. Because the employer already, this one is the employer representative. Okay. So this is the employer representative at the project site, the CA. Okay. So the CA is actually almost like the employer already in this instance. Okay. Yeah. And then how to get the contract administrator or the architect into the equation under your PAM 2018 standard form of contract. The first thing is the architect must be named in the contract document. It have to be a name architect. It cannot be just a company. It must be a name. Miss A, Miss B, Mr. C, Mr. D must be named. Then only the contract can be administered properly. It must be the name one. So then what are the important role that this name architect to play? Because we are now under the role, the rules. Okay. So this architect engaged with name architect will have many roles to play. The first one is agent of the employer. This is the first role. Okay, I hope you understand the agent when you study your law of contract. Okay, the second one It's a professionally. The architect must act professionally in the sense that the architect as a assessor, valuer, or certifier of the contract. Okay. So second one, the role architect is playing is a professionally. This one, agent, it means a representative of the client. It's represent the client. Okay. Yeah. And then the third one will be designer for the project, because the architect is sometimes will be engaged as the lead designer. Okay. And sometimes number 4, employer will make use of the architect appointed by the employer to administer, supervise the work. So can you see the role of the architect? How many? There are 4 heads. This is head number 1. Okay. This head number 2. This head number 3. And this is head number 4. So architect is wearing 4 hats in our traditional so-called procurement approach. Okay. It's very important. Most of the time, we are dealing with these 2 at the project side. When the project is implemented, okay. So these are the 2 heads that you focus on. These 2 heads. Now these are the important part. That is when project is implemented. These are the 2, 1 and number 2. That will be the more significant role the architect will play. Now how about the power? Where does the power of the architect comes from? Okay. So the power of architect is not simply he will act like a king in the project side. Okay. So it is reflected in the condition of contract. Okay. The power of the architect, and this one's contract administrator or architect, and when you use PAM, is reflected in the contract document. Once the contract document change, the power of the architect may change. Okay. Yeah. So when clients enter the contract with the contractor, okay, so the name already stated there who were going to be the representative of the client. That is the name architect. Okay. So this is the power given to the architect. It's written in the contract document. Okay. So usually to vary the contract work, that means the issue VO is one of them. These are some of the power. Okay. Number 1 is to issue VO. Okay. Yeah. So that is one of the power. Okay. Usually it must be in conformity with the things that is laid down in the contract. That means if the architect under the contract document says, okay, you can issue VO, but only to certain type of the work, then the architect can only issue VO to a certain type of the work. Cannot be more than that or anything that is different. Okay, so it's reflected in the document. So we're going to cover this in the future topics. Okay. Yeah. So the architect, usually their power is in the express authority in the contract document. Okay. But sometimes the authority is implied. Absence of express authority means the architect's authority is implied. I hope you can understand the difference between express and implied. Implied is not written. Okay. Implied, it means here not written. Okay. So express is written. Okay. Absence of express means not written. Okay. So generally, the non-written part, no authority to waive. So this is something that the architect cannot simply exceed the power. Okay. To waive strict compliance with the contract. Okay. Unless the employer give the authority to the architect. Okay. Yeah. So the second one is express provision purporting to confer finality generally not always binding. See, even though the power given to the architect saying that the decision is final, is not true. It is because in the PEM contract, you have the arbitration clause. Because under the arbitration clause, any decision made by the architect is subject to review by the arbitrator. That means the arbitrator, if challenged by the contractor in terms of the architect interpretation, the arbitrator will come in to review the dispute between the architect's opinion. Okay, so even the architect says this is final, to them under the contract, if there's arbitration clause, nothing is final until the arbitrator says so. This is important point for you to think about. Okay, yeah. Next one will be, I think this one is repeated already. Okay, this is repeated already. Yeah. Architect has no implied authority to make arrangement with third party. I believe just now earlier, I think we've gone through. Okay, this is repeated here. Unless specifically authorized under the contract or by internal memo of the delegated authority by the employer. Okay. Without the client's approval, architect cannot simply go and change the rights of the employer or the contractor or everyone. You can't, because that is outside your power. Only within the power you can do that. So without the client's approval, architect cannot engage consultants or other specialists because it will be acting outside the authority. Okay, so unless the employer says so. Okay, so with that, we take a few minutes break. Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay, so we take 5 minutes break here, then I will continue from there, from here. Okay, yeah. So now I will for those who are absent or haven't scanned, please scan now. Okay, 5 minutes for the break. I will update the so hmm, 1519. Come on. Yeah. What is this? So now we have 186 upon 189. Three of them are absent. Three of you. Okay, so one of them is Chong Wai Sing, Wen Sing. Second one is Carmen. Third one is Shirin. Okay, so three of you are absent. I think the rest are present because here is 186 upon 189. Okay. So can you see the screen clearly? Okay, good. Thanks. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I will continue now. No? Welcome back. So now, just now, we are looking into the so-called power. Power. These are the power. Okay. So differentiate between the power and the authority obligation. You have type 1, the general obligation. Okay. So these are the obligation of the contract administrator or the architect. Yeah. So if architect issue instruction, okay, if architect issue instruction, the contractor got every right to ask the architect, where does the power of the architect to issue such instruction come from? Okay, contractor is entitled to ask architect, okay, in the contract, identify which clause allow the architect to issue instruction. If you cannot show, the instruction becomes invalid. Okay, yeah. So another obligation, architect is only to stipulate the final result. How the contractor get it is not the architect's problem. So this is obligation. And also, architect do not have the duty to assist the contractor if the contractor cannot get the result. If, let's say, a project that the contractor must produce grade 80 concrete, not grade 80. If the contract tender and then they cannot get grade 80, this is the contractor's problem. Okay, so the contractor must find ways to get grade 80. Okay, this is what it means here. Stipulate the final result means grade 80 concrete for the column. Okay, if you cannot get it, too bad. So be careful when you give instruction, mandatory instruction. Okay, so if you give instruction that you cannot support, it will lead to problems and dispute in future. So this is the obligation to give instruction carefully, especially mandatory instruction. Okay. Next, be careful, as I say, it's a professional role by the architect. Okay. So during this professional role, the architect is carrying out the matter related to valuation. Okay. Valuation means involving payment, claims, VO matters, and so on. Okay. So architect must act impartially. This is your obligation. Okay. Professionally in this valuation, name architect must act impartially. and not as an agent. Once an agent, you are not impartial. That means you are representing the client. You are not impartial. Okay, agent is representing the client. It's not impartial. In payment, in extension of time valuation, all these things, we must act impartially. Okay. Yep. Another one will be objective in interpreting the contract. Okay, impartial. If you don't, then the architect could be sued under negligence, under the law of tort, okay, or under the contract. Okay, so in both liable, in both contract and tort. Okay, so contract, it means the employer can sue the architect, and then the contractor can sue the architect if architect acted negligently. So architect can be liable. So this is the general obligation. Now, these are the specific obligation of the architect. So this one is the specific obligation. Okay. So what are they? They're plentiful. This one will help you. So I believe that there's a whole series of them. I won't be going through one by one. So these are the so-called specific obligation of the architect. Okay. Supervision, monitoring progress, issuing certificate, issuing VOs, issue drawings, instructions, giving approval, and so on. So please go through this one. Are the specific obligation of the architect for any construction project. Okay. The next item will be under the PAM. We go into the next parties. So generally under the PAM, there are three important parties: the owner, the contract administrator, they administer the project on behalf of the owner, and the third one will be the contractor. Okay, the contractors are the parties inside this so-called traditional procurement system. So what is the main role of the contractor? Is the master integrator. I hope you understand the term master integrator, because you can see contractor is the parties to take up the project, to finish the project. Okay, the contractor will only usually be able to take part in certain part of the project. A lot of the items or activities or need to be by others. Okay, for example, electrical work, mechanical work, or sometimes the specialist work like tiling and so on. Okay, so the contractor role will be a master integrator. That means to integrate all the various so-called specialist work and other general works together. That's why I use the term a master integrator for the project, because no contractor can do everything. Okay, yeah, and also the contractor need to finance the project because of the terms of payment. Okay, so the contractor won't be able to get payment until few months after the commencement of work due to the terms and condition in the contract. Okay, so you have to finance the project until a certain time, then the cash flow will be positive. So initial cash flow will be negative. That's why you finance the project until reaching positive, then you don't need to borrow money elsewhere already. Okay, so these are the roles of the contractor, integrator, and financial. Same case for the owner, also have to finance also. Okay, then what are the responsibilities or duties of the contractor? So we have there, these are the duties the contractor must perform. Okay, must ensure that the work is carried out under care and diligence. Okay, so and then execute the work and complete it. If there are any defects, remedy the defects until you comply with the specification. Okay, yeah. So generally in most part of the traditional contract, the contractor won't be taking up the design. Okay, so sometimes there is a design portion that is in the contract saying that contractor please design certain part only. Okay, not the whole project. Okay, so contractor general responsibility is not to do design unless certain part is asked the contractor to design. Generally, the design is a very a minor part of the contract. Okay, if it's full design by the contractor, is no more traditional. It's designed and built already. Okay, so this in traditional one, design element are very minor. Okay, then the contractor need to provide the basic labor, plant, and construction equipment, material to ensure that the works are carried out properly until the defects are remedied. So this is their responsibility number 2, obligation number 2. Okay, yeah. So nothing in this clause shall affect the contractor's responsibility under common law. What does it mean here? So it means that once the contract is so-called signed, the contractor must ensure that the work is carried out to completion. Okay, so inherent responsibility by the contractor when the contract is signed is to complete the work. That's what they try to say here. Okay, the responsibility of the contractor is to complete the work. You can't cannot run away halfway. You're in trouble. Okay, so these are responsibility. Okay, yeah. But please remember, under operation and method of construction, contractor have full control. Nobody, consultant employer cannot instruct the contractor what to do. Okay, contractor take full responsibility in terms of the implementation of the work to ensure that the work is adequate, stable, safe to get it done properly. Okay, and also contractor shall not be responsible for the design of the permanent work. I did mention already, unless specifically delegated to the contractor. Okay, and also temporary work not prepared by the contractor. Generally, contractor is to prepare the temporary work. Sometimes certain temporary work not prepared by the contractor, contractor not responsible. Okay, or the works of the suppliers and the subcontractors. So these are something that the side parties must understand. So more often than not, these are the responsibilities of the contractor, except on design or temporary works that is not under the contractor's responsibility, or sometimes the subcontractors that is doing certain part of the work. If more often than not, these are under the contractor responsibility, but there's a possibility unless it is excluded, then it is not the contractor's responsibility. So generally, in traditional contract environment, contractor is going to be responsible for the permanent work, for the temporary works, unless excluded in the contract. So responsibility now for this special category, the NSCs and the DSCs. Okay, contractor shall be responsible. Any goods that is damaged, lost due to these subcontractors or suppliers, whether nominated or engaged privately by the contractor. Okay, and shall protect the employer against all loss due to all this happening. So this is the responsibility of the so-called contractor for the works carried out by the domestic or nominated subcontractors. Okay. So the next area is looking into the if there are discrepancies and ambiguity in the document, who is responsible? Okay, so if there are discrepancies, it is the contractor's duty to notify the architect in writing. This is a very important item that the contractor is responsible. Responsibility for ambiguity is a contractor's responsibility, if possible, okay, of any ambiguity, so that the contractor will ask the consultants for further instruction. Okay, because if there are any discrepancies, conflicts, inconsistency, that is at any time, located, then architect have to resolve by giving instruction. Okay, so the architect is the only person that can resolve this, and no other people. Issue instruction to the contractor to resolve the ambiguity, discrepancies, conflict, inconsistency, or omission. Okay, yeah, and then contractor need to comply such instruction. First part, okay, contractor need to comply with such instruction issued by the architect. Okay, then if complying may incur additional expenses, then the contractor need to submit a claim if there is any additional expenses or loss incur. Okay, so this is the important point. If there's any discrepancies, architect will issue instruction to you, and then contractor need to comply with the instruction. If the instruction to comply incur additional loss and expense, then contractor have to notify the architect in writing for additional money and time. Clear? So these are the steps involved. We will go into detail later. Okay, so these are part and parcel of the understanding of the administration of the contract. Now we get a good picture on what are the responsibilities of the various parties first. Okay, so this is the first part. If there is additional money incurred, then contractor need to notify. Okay, so the next thing is extension of time. And this is the second one. If we incur additional so-called time required. Okay, so if comply with the instruction where additional time incur, then contractor need to inform the architect on the additional time and money incur. Okay, so this one is additional money, this one is additional time. So also making use of the same clause 23 and 24 to inform the architect on the money and time incur for the architect to evaluate. Okay, yeah. So similarly, the instruction results in omission, and then the contract sum will be adjusted accordingly. So sometimes it can be omissions. More often than not is addition. Okay, so how to calculate the omission? You have to refer to clause 11 of your PEM. Okay, so then the architect make use of the QS to evaluate the omission of the work accordingly. So these are the things that happens in the contract administration. When we go further into our parts of the lectures. Okay, so this is one special case. One special case in Singapore. Okay, you'll find that this is happening. Okay, in other jurisdiction, what I mean is not in Malaysia. In Singapore. Okay, it will have this type of very special clause. Nothing in the contract entitle the contractor to extension of time or loss whatsoever for any ambiguity and so on. It's not in Malaysia. It is in Singapore. Okay, so in Singapore there is such a clause but not in PEP, where any ambiguity or this sort of thing is contractor's problem. You don't have time, you don't have other things to claim. Okay, so this is a very unfair clause. It doesn't happen in your PEM 20018. PEM 2018 is a fairer document as compared to Singapore on this particular aspect. Okay, so this is something for you to think about. Then we go on to the other responsibilities. Other responsibilities of the contractor. Okay, to carry out the work according to the contract. This is the fundamental responsibility. Okay, cannot stop the work midway. I keep on saying that once you sign the contract, you can't run already. Must complete the work until reaching CPC, Certificate of Practical Completion. Okay, yeah. So after that, you wait for the final certificate. If there are arbitration clause, then you will find that there will be delayed in terms of the final certificate to be issued. Okay, yeah. So now, how about the NSEs? Contractor has unqualified obligation to complete the work. The situation of a nominally subcontractor needs further consideration. Okay, so when NSEs are involved, main contractor got the right to object to the NSA's appointment. If you don't object, then later on you cannot blame already. Okay, because you have grounds to object, valid ground, then you can object. If you don't, then NSA is under your control and under your responsibility. Okay, so if you don't object and then you enter into a contract, the main contractor is going to be responsible for the NSA's so-called scope of work already. Okay, so who then does enter the contract with the main contractor? The liability to complete rests with the main contractor. So this is very important for you to think about. NSA is selected by the owner, but at the end of the day, the responsibility is with the contractor. It's very strange. This one is a very unfair type of arrangement, but this is the reality in the construction industry. Okay, so usually there is a right to object, but if there is no right to object, then it's a different story. Okay, if there's no right to object, then contractor cannot be responsible for the problems due to the NSEs. Okay, if there is no right to object, this one is there is a right to object, has the power to object. See here, has the power to object. This one have no power to object. Okay, so then the main contractor cannot be liable for the NSAs, whatever. Okay, so shall only remain liable for own subcontractors. This DSC. Please differentiate between DSCs and NSCs. Own subcontractor is called DSCs. Okay. And the next thing is, this is the contractor's responsibility to carry out the work and supply material. Yeah. To carry out the work with care and skill, and in a workman-like manner. That means doing your work in a proper manner, and also to use material of good quality. Okay, and also this is a very important one. Work and material must be fit for the purpose. This is a very important clause. Fit for the purpose. We may have to go into this one later to understand what is the meaning of fit for purpose. Okay. So the obligation to use material, all this thing is under this so-called obligation. Okay. To support this, there's a case law. Okay. Okay. So under the Young and Martin McNamara's Child, 1969. So this case law will tell you that the contractor need to supply good workmanship, good quality material, and fit for purpose. Okay. So unless such obligation are excluded in the contract, if it's silent, contractor is going to be responsible. The obligation to use good material is absolute and independent of fault if material are so chosen by the client. If the material is already specified by the client, and then it is not fit for the purpose, it is the contractor's responsibility. Case law to support this one is Young versus Martin. Young and Martin versus McNamara's Child, 1969. Will give you the legal support why contractor must produce good quality work, fit for purpose, and so unless excluded from the contract. Okay. So contractor must complete the work in reasonable time if there is nothing stated. Okay. Absence of express provision, that means in the contract there is silent. So still need to complete within reasonable time. What is reasonable time? We will go into it when you are going into your so-called tutorial. Okay. Yeah. If there's express provision for completion date is stated, then you must comply accordingly. Okay. There is implied terms that the contractor will proceed the work to achieve the date stated. Okay. And then the contractor has no right to terminate the contract before the due date. I already mentioned earlier, the contractor must finish it. Okay. If contractor is behind schedule, then the employer will impose LD. So this is something that the employer's weapon against the contractor. Should the client permit the completion date to pass and not oppose the continuing of the work under the contract, then it may have the client waive the LD so-called imposition. Okay. It means the employer give up the right. If not, the employer got the right to impose liquidated damages. Okay. So if the employer didn't waive, you will be subject to LD imposition. If they waive, then the contractor will get away. Okay. So these are the few things that you need to remember under this so-called contractors roles and obligation. Okay. Next, we go on to the QS roles and obligation. So the QS role here oversee parts of the construction operation. Sometimes the QS are involved, and then they could be involved in the construction or project management. So this is one of the potential role. Okay. The second one is act as a independent contractor. Independent contractor means specialist. The word independent contractor is not contractor. It means specialist. Okay. Independent contractor specialist, which you cover in under your law of contract. Okay. Independent contractor is a specialist. So assisting the contract administrator under your PAM. So these are the roles of the QS under PAM. So you will find that only in PAM, the QS roles are expressly stated. In other standard form, QS role not expressly stated. Okay. So what are the other roles? The other roles here will be during the planning stage. What are the roles of the QS? Yeah. Assessing whether the project is feasible or not. Okay. So assessing the project is feasible or not. That means whether the return on investment, ROI, is reasonable or not. If not, then the project is not feasible. Okay. So sometimes it acts as a consulting role to the engineers and architect. and help the architect and engineers in terms of the costing of their so-called design, okay, to produce a realistic budget. So this is what the key roles of the so-called QS during the planning stage, okay. Then how about during the other stages, okay. So this one is the role during planning, okay. These are the role, and now these are the obligation during the planning. This one is role. So obligation of the QS. So please differentiate between role and obligation. They are two different categories. Okay. So under the obligation, ensure you comply with the local and national regulation by the designer. Okay. And also feasibility studies. Ensure that they also comply with the planning procedures. So these are something that are obligation during the so-called planning. Then how about the roles during construction? Okay. And post-construction. Construction and post-construction, please differentiate between the two. They are slightly different. Okay. So under the construction and post-construction, to ensure that the project runs smoothly and hopefully they are within the budget. Okay. So if there are dispute and conflict, act as a liaison between the parties. Okay. So good interpersonal relationship between the parties to ensure that the project can be run smoothly. Okay, so these are the roles of the QS during construction and post-construction. Then next is the obligation. Monitor the cost and economics. The QS will monitor the cost, that is during construction. Conduct valuation for the work. Okay. And then evaluate valuation orders issued by the architect or contract administrator. As usual, material on site, QS will go out to assist in terms of the valuation. So these are the during your construction. Then obligation post-construction. So this one, shift ready, responsibility and function shift when it is post-construction after the CPC issued. Okay, post-construction means CPC is issued by the named architect. So what they do now, the responsibility and the function shift, now they monitor the building and make sure the operational cost is within budget. And the project adheres to the local tax laws and so on. Okay. Insurance claims and replacement. If there's an insurance claim, the QS will have to help out to evaluate the damage or the destroyed part of the building or structure. Okay, so these are after the construction. When the construction is completed already, then if the QS service is required by the employer, then these are the obligation of the QS. Then how about other responsibilities? Yep, QS have to prepare cost estimate, purchase plan. Okay, so organizing tender, these are part and parcel, which I think you all are very familiar. Compile purchase reports, procurement. Okay, also do research in terms of procurement, alternative material. Okay, and the balance between the cost and quality, because this is more like your value management already. Okay, these are a lot of value management exercise here. Okay, so other roles by the QS, drafting and interpreting the contract. Sometimes the architect will ask the QS, can you help up or not? Okay, yeah. So next will be provide consultation to companies, contractors, or those involved in the construction. So you can see the QS roles and obligations are very diverse and essential in the construction industry. Okay, so to ensure that the project will run smoothly, so you need the service of the QS. That's why you see your so-called career path is usually quite not to say what is very bright, because the construction industry, whether you're working for the contractor, subcontractors, developers, consultants, and even insurance company and bank, QS service definitely required. Okay, so what are their usual contribution? So these are the usual contribution by the QS. Keep project within legal, economical, structural limits. Okay, so these are important key success criteria for any project implementation. Okay, so next we are looking into the various type of the standard form and then how it flows. Okay, so this one is for you to go back and read through on the flow chart on the various type of standard form and when are they used and why are they used. Okay, I won't be going through this diagram because this will tell you when are they used and why are they used. So I take a break for a few minutes. I will continue on this so-called procurement. Okay. So break for 5 minutes. So I will continue at 5:42. 5:42. 5:42. I will continue. Okay, welcome back everyone. We go to the next section, is procurement path and contract requirement. Okay, so these are the procurement approach or strategies. So generally you can see procurement, there are two categories. One of them we call it traditional. It means the design is separate and the construction is separate. Okay, so under traditional, there are two subcategory in terms of the naming. One of them is design, bid, and build, and the other one is cost reimbursement type of arrangement. Okay, so the next one is the non-traditional category. I classify here as type 1 and type 2. Okay, so type 1 is focusing on delivery process, planning, and control. Okay, so this type 1. So this under the design and build, management contracting, or under this so-called innovative contracting. We call them PFI, PPP, or the BOOT type of family type of arrangement. And then the next so-called non-traditional type 2, here is delivery process, here is delivery team, see? So, and focus on collaboration and coordination. Here, delivery process, planning and control, type 1. This one is type 2, delivery team, the collaboration and coordination. So we are talking about partnering, alliancing, and early contractors involvement. So these are the types of the procurement approach that you come across. So please be careful. Different authors will have slightly different presentation. Okay, there are some authors who only have two types only. They put here as traditional, and as this whole thing is lumped as the non-traditional. Okay, but this one is this source I take from, I broken up further. Okay, so this is how the structure that I'm going to continue with the lectures, following one by one here. Okay, yeah. So the first thing is, at least you understand the meaning of procurement. Okay, so usually the procurement you can get from the dictionary or from this so-called publication here. Okay, Association of Project Managers. Okay, they describe procurement as this. This is the definition of so-called procurement. Okay, acquiring a service or product, and so on. Okay, yeah. So this is one of the definition for procurement. So it is about management on behalf of a client. Okay, using a proper so-called delivery process. Okay, this is procurement. Another one is suggest it to be taken in a sequential mode. Sequential things have been done sequentially. Okay, so sometimes I suggest that the process is often less rational, conducted in repetitive mode, and often influenced by politics and so on. So this is quite true in certain country. Okay, a lot of political influence and so on, and pressure groups and unethical type of decision making. Okay, so this is procurement under the construction environment because a lot of money are involved. So now we go on to the first category, that is traditional approach. Okay, so how this traditional approach having the characteristics. What is the characteristics or key features? The key features or characteristic of traditional approach. So this is the characteristic: separation of design from construction, with sequence of event being design ready, you tender it out or you call it the bidding, and then the contractor will build. This is the sequence. Okay, so the design phase being divided into by the consultants, to carry out by the consultant. Okay, and then the lead consultants will usually play the role in managing the project. So this is the traditional approach. Okay. And then the delivery is usually by the contractor, that the design partner. After the tender ready, successful, given to the contractor, this is a successful contractor. Okay. Successful contractor, they are selected after the competitive tendering, and then the contractor will deliver the project with the help of specialist contractor or other subcontractors. So this is what is the traditional approach. And then this is the so-called presentation on how the client, the consultants, and the contractor are linked. Okay, so this is the design bid build type of procurement. This is shown here. Okay, or you can make it in a very simplified form. This one is more complicated, so there is always a more simplified form where the client will have a contractual relation directly with the contractor. Okay, and then the contractor with the subcontractors and so on. Okay, so this is a more complicated one. If you want, you can change this one to a much simpler type of presentation. Okay, and then the second approach will be on the cost reimbursement category. Okay, cost reimbursement means cost plus. That means this type of arrangement under your traditional procurement is having no risk to the contractor because the contractor is being paid by the cost incurred, or the total cost incurred, then plus a profit for the contractor. So this is called the cost reimbursement approach. Okay, yeah. When either the design cannot be completed properly, and then or the employer want a lot of changes, so this is a better approach rather than using the traditional approach. Okay, so cost reimbursement is used when the design is far from complete, because you cannot complete the design, no point to tender it out. Correct? That's one point to think about. Or when the design team and the project owner decide there are a lot of changes. So these are the two situations. The cost reimbursement is going to be used. Now, these are the usual two situations. Okay, so that they don't have to worry about EOT and the additional cost incurred, because it's cost plus. Are you clear? It's cost plus. Then the next one we go on to design and build. One of the non-traditional one, the first type is the design and build. Okay, so under the design and build, it means the contractor is taking over the design function. It's called design and build. Design and build organization to carry out this two-in-one. I call it these are the two-in-one. Negotiate with the client before they carry out the design work. Okay. So part of the tendering or negotiation will be demonstrated on how the design and build organization responds to the client's need. So in order for the design and build to be successful, that means it must have something beneficial to the client. Okay. Yeah. But the client need to produce performance specification. Under the design and build, client must produce performance specification, because the contractor will design basing on your performance specification. You don't have to produce any detail of the design, but you need to produce a performance specification. Okay, because performance specification change, cost will change. Okay, so these are the impact of the design and build approach. Okay, so under the design and build, there are three variations. Okay, there are three variations, three three types. Okay, one you call it the integrated design and build. Second one is separate design and build. And the third category is a novated design and build. So integrated design and build, what does it mean? Design, cost, and implementation is in one organization. This is called integrated. Okay. Contract for the works is between design and build company and the client. So this is called integrated. That means the contractor take care of the design and build, integrated in one whole item. The second one is separate design and build. What does it mean? A temporary organization with necessary design and construction expertise will be involved. Okay, so separate the design is done by one party and then pass it to the contractor to do the construction. But the design team is under the contractor. This is separate design because the design is not done by the contractor, it's by another so-called design team, but they are linked with the contractor. So the project team is a concept team of independent for design and a construction firm. See, so there are two parties involved. Design firm, one, and then construction firm, another one. They form a consortium. See here the difference? Form a consortium. Here, integrated one is in one organization. See here, one organization is integrated. Consortium, separate. Okay, so A and B are separate. Okay, so these are the separate design. And the third category, what does it mean? It's called novated. Novated means what? Novated means the client asks a design firm to do the initial design and come up with a budget. Step number one. Okay, this is step number one. Okay, then after that, step number two. This conceptual work already designed by the owner, okay, is then hand over to the contractor. Okay, ask the contractor, okay, take over this design, okay, and then do the construction. And the designer that is engaged by the client will park under the contractor. This is called novation. So novation, there are two steps. First of all, client take the design team and ask them to design to create a budget. Then the client knows a certain budget already. Then, okay, call the contractor in. You take over this design plus the consultants doing the design, and then do the construction or develop the design further. Okay, this is novation. So these are the three categories under the design and build. Okay, so this is the so-called integrated type. This is the separated type, and then the third one is the novated type. That means the designer will be parked to the contractor. This part of the contract is no more. The client will engage this design consultant to design first. First contract here, then the second contract is this one. Client will pass it already, and the design consultant here is parked under here already. I hope we are clear. So this is the type 1, type 2, type 3. So with that, we stop here. We'll continue. So I did mention to you, I can't do it this Friday. We'll continue on Sunday, okay? So that is from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. This Sunday, okay? This Sunday. This Sunday is 13, isn't it? 13/6/2021. Okay. So this is, you'll meet again using the same access code. Okay. So, but before that, I will download. I will do the stop recording.